Today's my niece's birthday and she just went to college, so I thought I'd get her a laptop for her birthday. Now, I'm a student myself, but I still want to give her something special, so I searched for a great used laptop and I found a decent Toshiba. I sold my PSP and some other things so I can afford it. So there we were at the dinner table opening presents, and she opened mine and had this grim look on her face. "This is it? I thought you'd buy me a brand new one." "No, I can't afford it. It's the best I can do." "Well, I want a brand new one, not this. This sucks. Worst present ever." She then shoved the laptop and box across the table and it fell on the floor. I picked it up and walked out, and my cousin tried to stop me, but I just said I would never give her anything ever again. She even had the nerve to call back and ask for the laptop. What is the most ungrateful thing you've seen someone do? When I was 15, I was head over heels for this boy. We were together for almost a year, but most people didn't know behind closed doors, he was very abusive. I was already dealing with my own problems at home, and with this abuse, everything just piled up. And then one day I found out I was pregnant, and I wanted to keep the baby. Keep in mind I was 15 and had mental issues going on as well. But then when my parents found out, they were furious with me and my boyfriend. One day when I was looking for something, I saw my mom's computer about me being transferred. I didn't think much of it and I just brushed it off. After a really good day at school, I came home to two strangers telling me to pack up and we had to leave. I was extremely terrified and they grabbed me and my parents were nowhere in sight. A few plane rides later, we were in North Carolina for a wilderness program. I cried for days not knowing how to deal with the pain of being alone and pregnant. When the snow started coming in, I eventually got hypothermia and I fainted and I rolled down a hill. I was so scared when I woke up and kept asking how my baby was. I was bleeding badly and I was told I lost my child. From then, I blamed my parents because they knew this would happen. I became stronger and stronger and finished my time at the wilderness program before a year later When I was 27, my boyfriend proposed to me. We both have stable jobs and decided to plan the wedding immediately. Around the same time, my brother proposed to his 24-year-old girlfriend and they started planning for the wedding as well. One day, my future sister-in-law called me to see if we can go over wedding planning. That's when she told me if I could get married in the afternoon and that she could get married an hour or two later and then we share the reception. She said it'd become a great way for us to become sisters, and that this will mean the world to my brother. In reality, I know that they aren't financially well off and she wants the fancy wedding without the fancy wedding price tag. I didn't really know what to say, but I told her that's mine and my fiance's wedding. We planned it for us and we want it to be about us. She exploded in anger and said I wouldn't understand how hurtful it is to see the amazing wedding that I'm planning and know that she couldn't have something like that. I told her I waited to get married so that I could afford the wedding I wanted. And she said she wants to get married before she's old and dried up like some people. She called me heartless and a selfish bitch. I stormed off and my brother called me a few days later. He asked if I could please reconsider. I told him I didn't want to share my wedding day and I wasn't sure if I even wanted his fiancée there. My future mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I've ever met in my life. I'm 30 years old and my boyfriend is 31 and we've been together for 8 months. He's the sweetest and most caring man I've ever met in my life, but the biggest surprise is when I met his mother. I'm a natural redhead, so when we sat down for dinner, she asked me if my parents had the same color hair. And then she proceeds to ask me, does the carpet match the drapes? I looked over to my boyfriend who seemed equally as shocked, but he didn't say anything. And when I didn't respond back, she said, don't worry, I'll ask my son about it later. She then went on to attack my appearance and said my hair was too curly and I really needed to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I'm out with her son. And when I lost my appetite, she told me it was a good thing that I'm watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was my first meeting with this woman, and as soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. I told my boyfriend I needed some time. He went into apology overload, and this started by sending me flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages. He said he spoke with his mom and promised this would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. 2 weeks later, he invited me to come to a family birthday party. I met more of his family, and they were amazing people. His mother was avoiding me, and I had no problem with that. I went to grab something out of my purse when I noticed it was missing. I went and asked my boyfriend and he quickly began to help me look for it. He got this strange look on his face and he quickly went upstairs where I heard yelling and screaming. He came back down with my purse in hand. Turns out his mom took my purse so that she could take my license to run a background check on me. I thought it would be best to avoid all family functions until he insisted I come to a family reunion. I sat at a table with his sister and his cousins and his mom sat down as well. One of his cousins looked like my 12-year-old niece and I showed her a picture and that's when his mom began to laugh. She told me she hopes that if me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. And that's when I blew up on her like a volcano. She tried to play the victim and said I was a horrible woman. When my boyfriend decided it was time for us to leave and she saw something in his hand, she looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring, you little bitch," and lunged for my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box and threw it down the storm drain. Turns out he was planning on proposing and got the heirloom from his grandma at the party. My fiancé went no contact with his mom and that only lasted about a week before she came banging on our door trying to apologize. When I let her in, that's when all hell broke loose because she saw our Christmas tree. She began screaming that I was trying to convert her son to Christianity and that I was just a little whore who was trying to ruin her family. She started running towards my Christmas tree and began tearing off every ornament and throwing them and leaving them smashed on the floor. I have many childhood and family ornaments on my tree that were very precious to me that were all smashed during her rampage. I had to grab her and physically drag her away, and she was punching me several times and biting my hand. I had to call the cops. She told the police I was an intruder in her son's apartment and I attacked her. After my fiance came home and he was siding with me, that threw her into another rampage. When the police asked if I wanted to press charges, I looked at my fiance and he was conflicted. I had to do what made me feel safe, so I decided to press charges. She was taken to the hospital and then arrested upon her release. Him and the rest of his family want me to drop the charges against his mom since I have a restraining order. He said he'll stand by me in my decision, but doesn't want to see his mother go to prison. I'm so confused and conflicted on what to do. My fiancé and I postponed our wedding because his mother fell extremely ill, and so we're waiting until she's healthy enough to attend. My 17-year-old niece procrastinated in finding a dress for prom next Saturday, so she called me and asked if she could borrow one of my gowns. I work in the fashion industry and have amassed a small collection of black tie gowns that are reserved for events. I was happy to lend one out to my niece. They came over today, but I was on the phone with the client, so I just told them to go upstairs and go find something they liked. My cat knocked into a bag of flour, so I was busy cleaning that up when my niece and my sister walked out of my closet. I didn't want them to step into the mess, so I told them I'd catch them on my niece's prom night. I went to see what dress my niece took, and I noticed that the white bag that contained my wedding dress wasn't zipped all the way, and I noticed my dress was missing. I called my sister, but she was avoiding my phone calls and immediately drove her to her house to confront her. They initially denied, saying they didn't know that it was my wedding dress, but that was BS because my sister was there when I picked out the dress and was at all my fittings. Then they changed the story and said that was the only dress my niece liked, and didn't think it was a big deal since it didn't really look like a wedding dress and they would have returned it anyways. I simply took my dress and left, and my niece was furious and crying, saying I ruined her prom. A little backstory for setup. My husband died a little bit over a year ago, and he had a substantial life insurance policy as well as successful businesses that I recently sold. My brother recently proposed to his girlfriend, and her family came over so that we could start wedding planning. At dinner, my future sister-in-law pulls out a 3-ring binder and starts handing out information packets about her wedding. She also had a page that listed all of the expenses she expected everyone to contribute to. I looked at her and said, "You expect me to contribute? That's hilarious," and I was met with a stern gaze from my brother. "Oh my god, you're serious? Yeah, that's not happening." Cue the meltdown from the bride-to-be. Her dad speaks up and says he's giving $70,000 for her to do as she pleases. I get up to leave, and she gets in my face and said it's all my fault. I have the money, so I should be willing to spend it on her because she's going to be family. I just laughed, looked at my brother, and said, "Good luck with all that," and walked out. Ever since then, my future sister-in-law has been blowing me up and calling me names and telling me how awful I am. I know in my heart I'm not the asshole, but my friend seems to think I should contribute just to keep the peace in my family, which I don't really care about at this point. When my daughter was born, she had dark skin and looked like her parents could be of African descent. My husband was furious and accused me of cheating and left right then and there. He told everyone on both sides of the family what happened and wanted a divorce. Then his friends and families all called me to say how upset they were and called me really nasty names. My mother was by my side the entire time as I kept professing my innocence. He refused to pick me up from the hospital, threw my stuff out on the lawn, and changed the locks. When my sister called to get the baby stuff, he texted her a picture of a bare nursery room and said he got rid of everything. He even destroyed my art studio. Eventually, he agreed to do a paternity test, and he was 100% the father. No one could believe this, so we did it again, and he was the dad. One of his cousins did the ancestry thing and found out there was 30% of African in their family. This made Jim's paternal great-grandmother admit to having an affair around the same time Jim's grandfather was born, and because he could pass as hers, she just assumed her husband was the father. Since then, he's been reaching out and everyone has